President Trump signed an executive order excluding men from participating and competing against women in women's sports. This executive order also excludes men from entering into women's locker rooms. Now, any organization that is receiving federal funding that is allowing men to compete against women in women's sports or allowing men to enter into women's locker rooms could risk losing their federal funds. This was a warning issued by President Donald Trump.
In a few moments, I'll sign a historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. It's about time. Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women. If you'd like to gather around me, I think I'm going to be okay. Come on. Come on. Secret Service is worried about them. If we have to worry about them, we have big problems. Oh, I think we have a 10. Pretty good, huh? Okay? Good. Now you're going to go out and win those events, right?
During a Senate judicial hearing, Senator Hawley questioned NCAA President Charlie Baker regarding his policies of allowing men to enter into women's sports to compete against women and allowing men to enter women's locker rooms. And here's what he had to say.
You will not defend because, frankly, it's indefensible. Why are you, Mr. Baker, why are you allowing biological men to play in women's sports?
Because we believe that's consistent with federal policy.
So we're right back to your testimony is you believe you're compelled to do it by federal law. You would change it otherwise?
We believe our policy. I said in my opening comments to Senator Kennedy, the clarity on this issue at the federal level would be very helpful.
Oh, that is such a cop-out. In other words, somebody else please do it for us. Keep sending us the money. We'll go to court and argue that Title IX doesn't even apply to us.
We do not take a dime in federal money. Not a dime.
Is that why you're arguing Title IX doesn't apply?
No, yes, part of it, yes.
You honestly think you shouldn't be subject to Title IX?
We don't believe we currently are in court. Federal court has
amazing.
Federal court is affirmed.
Absolutely amazing. You have a pending lawsuit right now from female athletes who are suing you because you allow biological men not only in their sports but also in their locker rooms. Why do you do that, by the way? Why do your guidelines allow biological men into women's locker rooms without the women's consent? Without the women's foreknowledge? Why do you do that?
That's not what our guidelines say.
They do say that. I've got them right here. Your guidelines say that transgender student athletes should be able to use the locker room, shower, and toilet facilities in accordance with their gender identity. And here they are, right here.
And then everybody else should have an opportunity to use other facilities if they wish to do so.
Okay, so the burden's on the women. So if the women then want to move to a different facility, in other words, if they want to abandon their own locker room, you're saying that they should have to do that? So in other words, it's their problem?
No, we put a significant amount of emphasis on what the locals' plans are, and we make sure that everybody.
What does that mean, the locals' plans?
Whoever it is that's hosting the event.
You have guidelines that instruct them what the best practices are, and your guidelines say that biological men can go in and use the women's locker rooms if they want to. What the women want has nothing to do with it. They're not mentioned in here at all. Correct? Correct. It's right here. You just reaffirmed them in May of this year. I've got them. I'm reading them.
No, I believe our guidelines give people optionality with respect to how they choose to use their facilities. And many
optionality. What it says is transgender student athletes will be able to use the locker room, shower, and toilet in accordance with their gender identity. That means men will be able to use the women's locker rooms. And as Riley Gaines and others have testified before this committee, that means if a man, a biological man, wants to use their locker room, they just have to accept it. Or else the women have to go somewhere else. They've got to go find an alternative. Why is that fair?
We told the local folks who've hosted our tournaments they need to create accommodations for the people who are playing.
So it's the feds on the one hand, it's the locals on the other hand. The only person who doesn't seem to bear any responsibility in this is you and the NCAA.
I want you to listen to Riley Gaines' story. Now, she was a college athlete on the swim team. During a competition, she had to compete with a male. And I want you to hear the outcome of this story.
Second day of competition, the day after this, he and I race in the 200 freestyle. So, look, we get on the blocks, dive off, swim 8 laps of freestyle, touch the wall at the end. I look up at the scoreboard, and almost impossibly enough, Joe, we had gone the exact same time, meaning, of course, we had tied, which is it's incredibly embarrassing for a 6'4" man to not even be able to beat like a 5'5" female. But again, going a minute and 40-ish seconds, and not even 1/100th separated us. You can't tell me that's not divine intervention. But tied, we get out of the water, we go, you can see here, we both went 143.40. Not one of us going 143.39 or 143.41, tying. Get out of the water, go behind the awards podium. The NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself. Thomas, who is towering over me, right, 6'4", and this official looks at both of us and says, "Great job, you two. But you tied, and we only have one trophy, so we're going to give the trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you don't get one." My
Jesus Christ.
Heart rate was still high, having just competed. My adrenaline was still pumping. And so the first thing that I thought ended up being the first thing that I said. And the first thought that I had was just what you had just said, right? Like, isn't this everything that Title IX was passed to prevent from happening? What do you mean you're going to give the trophy to the man in the women's 200 freestyle? I asked the question that no one dared ask all season. And I said, why? Which, of course, he didn't have an answer as to why. They didn't give him a script of what to say when someone asks you the dreaded question of why. And so his first excuse he came up with, he's stumbling on his words, and he's, we're actually just doing this in chronological order, he said. And so I said, okay, do you mean alphabetical? Because G comes before T. Otherwise, I literally have no idea what you're being chronological about, right? We tied. So again, what's your rationale here? And finally, he realized that he didn't have a justification. He didn't have an answer for this. And so, and I actually appreciate his honesty. This is when his face changed. He looked sad. His voice changed. I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say. But this official looked at me and said, "Riley, I am so sorry, but we have been advised as an organization that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that the trophy's in Leah's hands. Again, you can pose with this one, but you have to give yours back. Leah takes the trophy home. You go home empty-handed, end of story. We can eventually mail you one."
Oh my God.
Is what they said.
Now, under President Trump's executive order regarding women's sports, men are no longer allowed to compete against women in sports. Also, men are not allowed to enter into women's locker rooms. And so that's all I want to share for now. And until next time, this is Felicia L. saying bye-bye.